DETV Sports Update is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service. Moving forward.
And welcome in live to another remote edition here of DETV Sports, soon to be rebranded here shortly in the coming weeks. Nick Alessandrini joined by the crew, as always, Jason McCall and Matthew Maurer, Dennis Pritchett behind the glass, running everything for us here on a Monday evening. A week hiatus we had to miss last week due to some other things going on, and here we are back, and what a day to return, as it is one of the biggest days of the year in terms of the NFL, and it's the offseason. It is free agent frenzy day. Free agency started today at noon. We've already seen a lot of these dominoes fall. And again, we kind of thought maybe we'd be getting into basketball, but a huge day still left in the NFL. So we're going to highlight that, touch on all the free agency news. We'll talk a little bit about the NBA, the Combine, and of course, college basketball with the selection show just 6 days away. So the NCAA tournament also just around the corner. But of course, it all starts with NFL free agency. All of our teams getting kind of active today as we welcome in the crew. As always, Jason McCall. How are you doing, Jason? A week removed, but here we are back on a Monday evening. Where were you this weekend? How you feeling?
In the house.
No way.
In the house. Well, minus Friday. Shout out to my man Malcolm. Happy birthday, good brother again. It's a good celebrate with you on Friday. But other than that, been in the house, man, just preparing myself for life, it's gonna happen in a few more months. So preparing to be in and sleepless nights and all that good stuff. So just happy to be back this week,
That's
man.
Right. Yeah. And again, we might see each other checking our phones. We are in the midst of free agency. Got another update here as we'll announce it in just a second. Another domino falling in the running back market. But as we welcome in Matthew Maurer. Matt, how we doing on a Monday evening?
Doing well. I can't complain. I mean, just catching up on, basketball, college basketball, and everything else is so, just having fun. It's that time of the year, right?
Yeah, that is certainly right. We're going to have an action-packed next couple of weeks here on the show. So a lot to dive into. We're not going to start with this, but I'm just going to throw it out there because it's breaking news as we're on the air live. Austin Ekeler has signed a deal with the Washington Commanders. So he's going to head to Washington to play alongside Brian Robinson Jr. Antonio Gibson, he's no longer there. He signed a 3-year deal with the Patriots earlier today. So Austin Ekeler, $3 million signing bonus, 4.82 in the first year. I'll have to get the contract details here shortly. 2 years, $11.4 million for Austin Ekeler. So significantly, down from what we saw out of some of these other guys. We'll touch on the market for running backs in general here in just a moment. But we just broke the news. So guys, initial reactions here to Austin Ekeler. Kind of a down year last year, battled some injuries, and now he makes his way to the NFC East. He was one of those big names on the free agency and running back market.
I mean, that's my reaction. It's Austin Ekeler. He wasn't the best last year and on the offense that he familiar with. But if you're the Commanders, any pickup you get right now is essentially a good one for rebranding and rebuild purposes. But the signing of Ekeler makes me wonder how they're going to use Brian Robinson Jr. This season. Is Ekeler going to be a starter? Is Robinson the starter? They're going to battle out training camp and do something. But I think honestly that you should probably start Brian Robinson Jr., but signing Ekeler doesn't mean they have a lot of confidence in Robinson Jr. as of right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, we saw Ekeler last year. Matt, you're obviously an avid fantasy player. I had him in the first round. Quite a mistake last season. He's been a touchdown machine over the past couple of years. A big down year for him last year, though. Injury, missed a lot of the year. And then when he returned towards the tail end of the season, Herbert was injured, and he just didn't look like the same guy. Looked, maybe a step slower, battling those injuries. That running back age we like to talk about is right around 27, 28 years old. He's now up over that mark this upcoming season. He's on the back half of his career in terms of running back age. What do you think about the signing and maybe Austin Ekeler as a fantasy option next year, Matt?
Well, as a fantasy option, I wouldn't touch him in the first 5 rounds, probably. He's just the guy that I think his value at this point is more of a pass-catching back, which is where if you look at his numbers, that's where he's really thrived, especially off screens and short dump-offs near the red zone. He's not really a punch it type of guy like Gus Edwards. He's more of a guy who gets in open field situations. Definitely makes a lot of his damage, kind of like a more souped up James White, who was a couple years ago. But yeah, I just don't see Eckler. Unfortunately, I think he's just at that part where you have attrition. And a lot of people, Eckler's pretty small. He's not a guy that's dominating physically. So yeah, unfortunately, I think this is probably his swan song in the NFL. I think he can probably make some decent noise. I mean, maybe I take him in the 7th or 8th round, or if you, depending on your league, if somebody's really swallowing up all the running backs early, pause. But then I take a flyer then. But other than that, I wouldn't risk too much with him, unfortunately.
Now, we saw earlier today, guys, like a lot of the running backs went off the board early, and you talk about the contracts and the money, and something the last couple of years that has been a hot topic is nobody wants to pay the running backs, right? The market just hasn't been there. It's been a cold market for running backs here in the last couple of years. But coming up with the draft this year, maybe kind of a down draft, you might say, in the running back position. No running backs projected to go in the first round. You might see a few in the 2nd to 3rd round here in 2024. So that's kind of making these GMs and these teams around the league kind of jump at these free agent running backs for the upcoming season. And we haven't seen a market like this for running backs here, in some time, especially the way that it's been trending the last couple of years. So we're going to start dive in. I just wanted to start there with some breaking news on Austin Eckler. Personally, I'm not a big on Eckler at all this year. I'm with Matt. I wouldn't touch him, in fantasy on the upcoming season. I think Brian Robinson, as we all agree, should be the starter. He's been getting better and better each and every year. I thought he had a good year last year. They didn't really have a lot of talent on that team. They weren't playing for anything late, especially with the whole change of ownership. Coach, you knew Ron Rivera was going to be fired, all that stuff. So I think it's going to be more of a stable situation next year with Josh Harris, et cetera, depending on what they do in the draft. But Austin Eckler, for me, I'm with Matt, maybe, and you guys too, Jason. Just a 1-2 punch. Robinson should be the starter. Maybe he'll get some passing, work. I'm sure he'll be involved, no doubt. You don't sign him, if you're not going to get him involved on a 2-year deal worth that much money. So we'll see what he does. But interesting to see him go to the Commanders. A lot of people were wondering where Austin Eckler would end up coming up this year. Does get to play now under Cliff Kingsbury in that offense, so we'll see if that can help him out a little bit. But he is over that running back age where we start to see that decline. So we got some free agent moves to talk about. We talk about the combine and some draft stuff, and then we'll finish up with some college basketball and maybe touch on the NBA as things starting to heat up with some injury news and some other stuff as well. But we just talked about Eckler. Let's dive in now to the overall kind of generalization of today in free agency. It was a big day from early this morning up until what we're talking about now with that Austin Eckler news. But the big one, it started last night, guys, and that was Russell Wilson was given a chance to talk to teams before the legal tampering period began today at noon. The Broncos gave him that luxury. Obviously, they knew they were going to release him to just kind of be generous and let him decide where he wanted to go. Didn't take much time at all. He was in Pittsburgh for 6 hours last Friday, visiting with Tomlin and the representatives in Pittsburgh after a short meeting with the Giants in Jersey. So he's there. He liked what the opportunity that's going to be coming to him. And guys, you got to love the deal. $1.2 million. Denver's going to be paying him $39 million off of their books next year. So if you're the Steelers, you can't hate that deal, right? You bring somebody in that you would project potentially to be the starter over Kenny Pickett, even though he didn't have a lot of help in that offense with what he was being coached with the last few years. But for $1.2 million, you come in, you get Russell Wilson for a team that was close to winning a playoff game. How do you guys see the Russell Wilson signing? Did you want to see him go somewhere else, or do you like it for Pittsburgh?
I love it for Pittsburgh. I think, when you can get a guy for that kind of a value, to be a stopgap until either Pickett maturates, which I don't think is ever going to happen, or, you go in the draft and you go get somebody else, which I think we're going to see Pittsburgh grab a QB within the first 3 rounds. I would be shocked if they don't. It's a great opportunity for them to grab somebody and learn behind Russell and kind of be an understudy. I think it's the best quarterback they've had since Ben. So I think he can make some really good noise with Pickens. I think Pickens is great. I think the tight end they have there is exceptional. So I like a lot of what Pittsburgh has. I think the pieces don't work well because the pieces, if we all kind of remember how the Steelers kind of run, the pieces run best when you have a competent QB. If you don't have a competent QB, pieces don't look very good. It's kind of like, and I'm not trying to, make any jabs towards Jason's team, but it's like the Ravens have always had a very good to near elite tight end. Even as far back as the Todd Heap years, they always had a good tight end. So it's kind of the philosophy, right? And I think that that's the thing with the Steelers. The philosophy is we need to have a competent QB, and they don't do well without a competent QB. So I think that this is what really is going to help them. I think Tomlin finally might be able to get a playoff win because the defense is still really good. And I still like the pieces they got offensively. I mean, they got some work to do, of course, but it's not the obstacle that was with Denver. And let me just also say this before I give it to my man Jason. So I saw that, and we'll touch on this signing, of course, is Saquon Barkley. With Tiki Barber said, you can't do that move. This is why players don't have loyalty, is because what Denver did to Russell Wilson. Essentially, they essentially went in and they essentially sabotaged him. They did everything they could to show him the door. And this is why players don't have loyalty to franchises anymore. And you can't be mad at them because essentially that's what happened to Russell Wilson. I'm just glad he's back to a city that will probably appreciate his quarterback play.
Yeah, Jason, if we know Pittsburgh, long history, one of the most successful franchises, obviously, in the NFL over the however many years, 6 Super Bowl victories for them. Something they don't do often is go out and get some of these veteran quarterbacks or go out and sign old quarterbacks. It's not something that they've done in the past. They do it here. I think it's a good move for them going forward. Obviously, not a long-term solution, but we'll see how it goes. And to Matt's point, Denver going to Russell Wilson towards the end of that last season, asking him to take out that injury clause, for that much money, or they're going to bench him, going behind the back of the NFLPA. And as Matt said, just a crazy scenario in Denver last year. So hopefully things start to clear up for him. And we get to see Sierra back on the East Coast in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a win-win for everybody on both sides. I'm a big fan of this pickup. I do believe Russell Wilson is still a top tier quarterback in this NFL in his league here. I believe he still has a good 3 or 4 good years left. I'm not talking about average play, but still 3 or 4 years of good play left. And like Matt said, you take a flyer on a 9-time Pro Bowler for $1.2 million. Who wouldn't do that? And also, as Matt said earlier, it just goes to show you how piss poor of a franchise the Denver Broncos are right now. I mean, they've been poorly ran. I mean, outside of the Peyton Manning years, they've been poorly ran since Elway retired. We're talking about 25, 26 years ago. I mean, you go from Jake Plummer to the Tim Tebows to Drew Lock. I mean, you can go on and on and on. How many
Paxton Lynch,
had
Brock
Osweiler. I mean, Denver really hasn't been ran effectively in the last 20 plus years outside of the Peyton Manning era, which was actually in a way. I know we talk about Tebow's career, but it was so disrespectful to him after he won a playoff game the prior season. Then you don't keep him on as an understudy at all. So, I mean, they've been poorly ran for a while. And speaking of Denver, not only do you let Russell Wilson go, you trade Jerry Jeudy to another division rival in the AFC North in the Browns. So for the Ravens, it didn't start off well as far as offseason with division rivals because you have Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, and you have Jerry Jeudy going to Cleveland. So what has happened in the AFC North is Baltimore, of course, a class of the division this past season, but now you have rivals who are 1 or 2 pieces or 1 or 2 games away, essentially, from making real noise in the playoffs. Now they're adding integral pieces at skill positions, and it's great for both those teams, but it's great for Russell Wilson. Match made in heaven with him and Mike Tomlin. Pittsburgh has been missing quarterback play since Ben retired. Well, I'll say they've missing quarterback play Ben's last 2-3 years also.
Yeah, ever since the injury.
Prior to that. So you have someone who essentially, when you think about their durability and their arm and how they play the game, Russell Wilson is probably the most comparable quarterback skill set wise to Ben Roethlisberger as far as how he plays, how he can run the ball, how he can stay in the pocket and take hits and still deliver the ball downfield. So you're kind of getting a Ben-esque type player, if you will, in Russell Wilson, and knowing the scheme and things of that nature. The problem in Pittsburgh is, are you still trying to get rid of Deontay Johnson?
They're apparently listening to offers. We'll see. If you're Pittsburgh, you got to hopefully to bring him back. Just some stats, and we talked about it. The last 2 seasons, the Steelers have thrown for 14 touchdown passes combined in the last 2 years. Russell Wilson threw 26 last year. So a little bit of an upgrade in terms of scoring definitely coming. Of course, Russell Wilson, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, one of the best ratios in the NFL last year. So he's going to bring that to Pittsburgh. And we all know Arthur Smith did a heck of a job with Ryan Tannehill that first year coming over from Miami with Tennessee. So kind of like a similar thing I think we'll see out of Russell Wilson. They're going to run the ball. The offensive line looked good towards the end of the year. They're going to get better, and a lot of play action probably out of Russell Wilson. Last year for the Steelers, 6 of their 7 losses, they only scored 13 or less points. I mean, that's kind of hard to fathom. So now you bring in Russell Wilson, who knows what that record looks like. And as Jason mentioned, that AFC North is going to be even tougher. It was maybe the best division or one of the best divisions in football this year. It's going to be even better next year when you get Joe Burrow back in Cincinnati. And we'll talk about the Bengals here in a little bit and some of the other moves these other teams have made. So let's keep it moving then. And let's start now with some other news. And let's go to another quarterback that made the headlines. He was the biggest in terms of maybe free agent name at the quarterback position and maybe overall this year in free agency. It's someone that we refer to on the program as Matt dubbed Captain Mid back in the beginning of our DETV Sports. And I have to say, last year he had a really good year. He led the league in touchdown passes before the Achilles injury, and that is Kirk Cousins. So a lot of people thought he gets that fully guaranteed deal when he goes to Minnesota. He had some good years there, 4 years in Minnesota. Obviously, Justin Jefferson has burst onto the scene as the best receiver in the league. He wanted Kirk Cousins back. And we were all talking before we went on the air. We want Kirk Cousins' agent. He seems to be doing some phenomenal stuff. More guaranteed money, 4 years, $180 million, $50 million signing bonus, $100 million guaranteed for Kirk Cousins. So he's coming off the Achilles. He gets another 4-year, multi-year deal, this time to go to Atlanta. And guys, a team that a lot of us talked about just a quarterback away. You talk about the weapons in the last 3 drafts. They draft Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson all in the first round. Those guys are dynamic playmakers, or at least we think so. We haven't had a chance to see it because of how bad the quarterback play has been in Atlanta. There were some rumors about Justin Fields maybe going home, being traded to the Falcons. Well, that's not the case, as they now have their guy in Kirk Cousins. Again, coming off a great year last year before that injury. Are the Falcons now the favorites to win that NFC South? They are to me. And are they to you guys? And how dangerous are they going to be in the NFC as a whole now? With a lot of defense was good, offensive line's good. Now they got the quarterback.
Yeah, man. I mean, Kirko Chains, baby. Kirko Chains is now in the ATL. We get a lot more chains, man. Get to wear his jewelry and his pieces. 4 years, 180 million, 50 million signing bonus. So it's 100 million essentially guaranteed. I mean, like we said off air, he has the greatest agent of all time. Shout out to his agent, the GOAT. But as far as from a personnel standpoint, again, I liken this to the Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh scenario, but just a lot more money for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
he couldn't find a better landing spot as far as still having talent and still having some pieces around him. But the question will be, at Kirk Cousins' age, is his durability coming off that Achilles? It's stated that he will be ready for OTAs and for training camp. So my only hesitancy with this deal is the amount of money that it was for a player coming off an Achilles, as we saw last year. Aaron Rodgers, his Achilles 13 seconds into the season. So we have to see what kind of mobility Kirk Cousins has. But as far as that offense is concerned, if you are a fan of Drake London, you are happy with this signing. If you are a fan of Kyle Pitts, you're extremely happy with this signing. And if you're Bijan Robinson, the running lane just opened up with this signing. And we know Kirk is very good when he has a solid running game behind him. So, like this for Atlanta, yes, they are the favorites in the NFC South. I'm not going Super Bowl contender and all that stuff, but NFC South, yeah, they should definitely be in the running for that division, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. Drake London was my number 1 receiver coming out in that 2022 NFL draft. Stock is up for Drake London. I think he's going to have a huge year next year. I think that goes with Kyle Pitts, who might be giving Kirk number 8. Maybe we see Kyle Pitts go back to number 84, like we saw at the University of Florida. We'll see. Matt, here we go. Give you the floor here. Captain Mid, a new contract, another big contract. He's going to Atlanta. What are your expectations for the Falcons next year with him?
Well, definitely playoffs. The thing, look, Kirk Cousins, I made a joke and call him Captain Mid, but let me tell you something. He's not mid at life. Let me tell you, he's got an elite life. I mean, with that kind of money he's getting. But seriously, he's great when the table is really set, and the table is set there. They have offensive line, they have running back, they have wide out, they have tight end. They really have a lot of what Kirk Cousins needs to really get himself going. They always just didn't have the quarterback, whether it was Marcus Mariota and I'm sure we can all admit now that the Cincy kid is probably done at this point. He'll be a backup at best, or maybe they think they can still rehash him. I don't see how it's going to happen. Yeah. I think he didn't show enough. I think this kid is probably going to be a backup and maybe be out of the league in a few years. He did not look good. They thought he was going to take some steps forwards. But let me just say this. I echo the sentiment of Jason that Kirk Cousins is definitely at that age where you do wonder, we've seen this with quarterbacks where they go in, you say, man, the table's set, everything's good. Russell Wilson has the same danger too, what I'm about to say is, and all of a sudden they just go off a steep cliff. Everything just declines. The ball has less zip on it. We saw this with Peyton Manning. We saw this with Drew Brees towards the end. Like, they just fall off the cliff. They'll have an elite year, and then the next year, it's like somebody took their powers away or put kryptonite in their jersey. It's just a different player. So I hope they do get the return, because Atlanta, for everything they've spent to get those weapons, they deserve to see what that team looks like at full strength. And then that leads me to my next guy, who I think is the mid and waiting, as I call it. Is probably going to be Jared Goff, man. That's the mid and waiting. But so I'm going to take the Captain Mid tag off Kirk Cousins.
Oh, there we go. He's taking it off.
I'm going to put it on Jared Goff. So
Jared Goff coming off a trip to the NFC Championship. We'll talk and see, coming in, if they're in for a down year, maybe coming up. They did sign Jonah Jackson. We'll see how the rest of their free agency goes. But again, just to your point, though, Matt, and for a lesser extent, we talk about going to new places. How about Deshaun Watson with that fully guaranteed deal? Cleveland hasn't quite been, not even to the age factor, just in terms of a change of scenery. So we'll see if he can get back on track next year. Did look a little bit better before that shoulder injury, but he wasn't the guy that they gave a fully guaranteed contract to either. So we'll see if that changes and how he looks next year for Cleveland. But to stick with the quarterbacks, we all know Dennis, a big Bucs fan here. Well, they get their guy back. We talked about it since the playoffs. What was the number going to be? We figured he'd be back in Tampa, but what was the number going to be? And he signs a 3-year, $100 million deal with Tampa. So at the front of it, it kind of looks like 30 plus a year, but the way it's structured, it's going to be low in the first couple years, some of it into a signing bonus. It's not as bad as it looks in terms of the cap on a 3-year, $100 million deal. They're able to get Mike Evans back, etc. So Dennis, we talked about Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons. That made things a little bit tougher on the Bucs, or your reigning division champions. Guys, we kind of saw this coming. Any big news, or what are your thoughts on Baker Mayfield returning? Matt, we can start with you here.
I mean, look, it makes sense for Tampa Bay. I mean, I think they're taking the approach that Baker is got the maturity now. He's got the professionalism to take that step forward and continue to elevate his play. I don't know. I was never high on Baker coming out of college. I thought he was overrated then. I thought he was overrated with in Cleveland. And I did see a lot of the value come with the signing that they got him for last year. He still made some bad plays from time to time, but for the most part, his play was great last year. With this new contract, though, he's going to have to take another step forward, because now you've now have essentially big time money invested in him. I see they also got Mike Evans back involved. So look, they're trying to set the table just like Atlanta for Baker Mayfield. They don't have the weapons, but they're trying to set it as well as they can for Baker. I'm not a Baker guy. I just never will be. I think he had a great year. I think he got lightning in a bottle. We'll see. I'm not going to bet against the kid, or should I say I'm not going to cheer against him, but I definitely wouldn't have a strong investment in him in fantasy. He'd be a guy that maybe I'd pick up when everybody else is going off the board, and you're just hoping you can get that one more year. I mean, could he reinvent his career? Sure. Or he could be, and people don't like to hear this, Ryan Tannehill where Ryan Tannehill had that really one spectacular year and then kind of just slowly fizzled into oblivion in Tennessee. So, look, I hope it works out for Tampa Bay. I really do.
Well, I think he's already better than Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I think he's proven that with taking Cleveland of all teams to the playoffs after their many years of a drought, and then being unceremoniously escorted out of Cleveland with the Watson deal. So I do think his maturity has turned the corner. What you mentioned earlier, I do think his maturity turned the corner, and I think for Tampa Bay, you go with what you know. So the contract reflects that, and the trust in Baker reflects that. And I don't think that you could have kept Mike Evans if you didn't resign Baker Mayfield. I think that was like a tandem deal, if you will. They wanted to see who was going to sign first. But I think that for them to be successful, that they were both going to stay in Tampa. So it's a win-win again for Tampa. You get Mike Evans back, you get Baker Mayfield back. And I think now they have to make some moves on the other side of the ball, addressing the defense. In the draft, addressing linebacker and corner for sure. In other free agency or in the draft. But with Tampa, you have to keep continuity, and it's the best way to do it with signing Baker. And the contract doesn't look as bad. We see $100 million, but in this age of balloon salaries, if this were like 5 years ago, it would still be like a $15-20 million deal average base value. So it's a good deal.
What do you think, Dennis? We got Dennis is able to join us here when we go remotely. So, Dennis, if you're able to, what do you think? Exactly what you wanted and the deal that you were looking for financially?
I think they paid too much for him. I think they paid entirely too much for him.
Oh, Dennis, Bucks fan, getting in there saying he too much.
I would have re-signed him, but not that much money.
So with Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons, Dennis, how do you feel about your Bucks in the division next year?
They can still win. It's Captain Mid. I know Matt took the label off of him, but he's still Captain Mid.
Dennis not ready to take that label off just yet. And again, we do have a few trades to get to here in a second, but since we're talking about the Bucks, Carlton Davis being traded to the Lions, so some secondary help coming to Detroit now. There. So Carlton Davis no longer a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But guys, let's get to the running backs, and it was a very good day for running backs. And who would have thought in free agency? We talked a little bit about Saquon early on. That was the big one. Where was Saquon Barkley going to go? What kind of deal was he going to get? Franchise tag last year with the New York Giants, and this year he gets just over that franchise tag with a 3-year, $37.75 million deal. He will have some incentives added on to that, but structurally looking at it, he's making just about $12 million a year after the deal. So Saquon is a Philadelphia Eagle. Josh Jacobs, a stunning deal here as he signs a 4-year deal with the Green Bay Packers. So that one caught a lot of people off guard as well. Didn't see Green Bay being one of those teams to spend money at that position, especially with Aaron Jones still on the roster. That is no longer the case. Aaron Jones was released by the Packers earlier today in a big move there. He's now on the clock and could be heading somewhere else. Tony Pollard, kind of a disappointing year last year in Dallas, taking over that role for Ezekiel Elliott. He gets a 3-year deal for $24 million to head to the Tennessee Titans. So he'll be now playing alongside second-year Tajay Spears, who I really liked Spears. I mean, I don't know how I feel about them signing.
Yeah, Matt.
Spears
got a deal.
I like Spears a lot. I thought he was going to be fantastic next year. But now we'll have a little 1-2 punch, it looks like, in Tennessee, and almost similar backs with the way they're built. So going to be interesting to see there. And then DeAndre Swift, the exact same deal as Pollard, 3 years, $24 million. He heads the Chicago Bears, who needed a running back. Roshan Johnson will be in his second year. Battled some injuries in his rookie season last year. So the Bears get their running back in DeAndre Swift. So Swift, Pollard, Jacobs, Barkley, and Eckler are all off the board. That leaves Derrick Henry and now Aaron Jones, who was now a free agent, which was unexpected. He'll now be able to visit some teams and see where he decides to go. Gus Edwards, he signs a 2-year deal. I'm sorry, Jason, to the Chargers. He's going with Harbaugh. They want to, develop that power run game. So that's what Jim Harbaugh is setting to do. And they bring in and pair him in with Greg Roman, the former offensive coordinator in Baltimore. So they know each other there. But guys, let's start with Saquon, and then we'll kind of look at all these other running back signings here. 3 years, $37.75 million, and it's been split down on social, right? The Eagles fans are saying they like it. A lot of everybody else says they don't like it. Even some Eagles fans say they don't like it. I personally, was never one to pay a running back, etc. But I like this a lot for Philly. I like Saquon Barkley. 12 million is, if you want to pay him 4 million more than Swift or some of those other guys, I'm okay with it. He's played in over 13 games in 5 of the last 6 seasons. Penn State guy, grew up an hour away from Philadelphia, a fantastic locker room guy. I think 12 million is just not breaking the bank. And I think now you have that reliable guy, a 3-down back that Philly hasn't had since LaShawn McCoy. Last year, it was 3rd down, catching out of the backfield, and also stepping up in pass protection. They didn't have that at all out of Swift and company last year. Saquon can do all of those things. I like it a lot for the Eagles. I think he's going to have a fantastic year if he can stay healthy. One goes from the worst offensive line to the number 1 rated run offensive line in the year for the Eagles last year. We know they're losing Kelsey, but they'll look to fill that with Cam Jurgens. I like it a lot, guys, for Saquon. It's a controversial signing here. What do you guys think?
Hate it. Stupid.
Go in, man. What do you think? Why?
I mean, let me just add, like, I got questions here. So here's the problem I have with the Saquon Barkley. And don't get me wrong, I think any other time it would be a great signing. But my question is this: like, how many more weapons does the Eagles need at offense? Like, you pay all this money into Hurts. You're saying to us, Hurts is our franchise guy. You have 2 franchise wideouts. You have a franchise tight end. You have franchise O-line. This now you're putting huge investment into the running back position at $37 million. At what point is Hurts going to show and earn his money? At what point does the Philadelphia Eagles management say, we trust Hurts? Because if you ask me, this signing tells me they don't trust Hurts fully, that they think that Hurts still needs more weapons. It's like the LeBron conversation. He needs more weapons. How many more weapons does this guy need if you're telling me he's the guy? And that's the problem I have. I mean, in Lamar, you have conversations. People look at those Buffalo with Allen, Mahomes in Kansas City, a lot. And look, to be quite fair, I even talk about my own team. A lot of the criticism has been Brock Purdy has a table that is ridiculously set. So of course he should do well. And I think there's a lot to that. That's why I didn't have a real bad problem with what Cam Newton said. But at some point, are we going to allow Hurts to earn his money? Are we going to say, oh, here, take the training wheels off. It's time to go. Because at this point, clock is ticking. When are you going to let this guy show that he's the money that you gave him? I mean, you gave him franchise quarterback money. It's not like he's in a $5 or $10 or $15 million deal. He's got a substantial value, and you just keep adding more offensive weapons, even though, let's just be honest, I think the problem with the offense was they stopped believing in each other, and then you had the defense that just couldn't stop a nosebleed. So I just look, I don't really have a bad take about Saquon because I think he's a good back, but Jason touched on it in the comments when we were texting each other. Can he stay healthy? This is a guy that, I don't think Philly fans are really going to like. He's not a lunch pail guy. He's a guy that if he stubs his toe, it inflates to the size of a balloon and he's on the sidelines. And I don't know, man, like I look, hats off to Philly for, again, throwing money. And look, I'll give Philly full credit. They also got Bryce Huff, who's pretty solid. So I don't want to act like they didn't do anything on the defensive side. But again, they got another pass rusher. So it's not like that. So we're still having the same problem that we're going to have with pass coverage and everything else with Philly. So again, I'm just a little frustrated. At a certain point, I just want to see them tell me that they have full belief in Hurts, and I don't think they do.
Well, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum with that. Anytime you can steal an elite talent from a division rival, you go do it. And the Giants lost 2 talents today. Not only did they lose Barkley, they lost Xavier McKinney as well. So you robbed the Giants blind. And to what you said again earlier, Matt, Tiki Barber is a joke. He's just mad that he retired before the Giants could win Super Bowls, and there's no coincidence that they won the Super Bowls without him playing on the team. There's no coincidence in that. He was locker room cancer in New York, so he really can't talk about anybody at all. He never embraced Saquon. Saquon actually fired a comment back at him hours ago about that. But Saquon to Philly has been rumored. It's one of the worst kept secrets in football as well. With his interest in teams that he wanted to play for. But I believe that with Saquon's skill set, this is probably the best running back skill set wise. You combine running ability and pass catching. He's the best running back that they've actually had overall. Not discrediting Shady at all, but he's more of a Bryant Westbrook-esque type of runner in that offense based on his skill set. So we all saw rookie Saquon. He's still fifth in scrimmage yards per game since his rookie year at 99 yards a game. So he's still top 5 back in the league scrimmage yards per game. Again, the health is an issue, but also he's had a trash offensive line his entire career. Now he has one of the greatest lines in recent memory to run behind. So this would be like, I'm not calling him Barry Sanders at all, but just hear the comparison I'm doing. This is like Barry Sanders going from running behind Detroit's line to running behind Dallas's line and seeing what he could do. That's all I'm saying. I'm not comparing him to Barry at all, but I'm talking about the difference in the offensive lines. So he's going from a Detroit type of line to a Great Wall, Dallas type of line in Philly. And he has no excuse now because you can't say it's health. You can't say you can't hit the holes. You have this mammoth line. If Saquon Barkley doesn't run for at least 15,000 yards, 1,500 yards next season, it's a bad deal. He has to have at least 1,500 yards in his offense. At least 1,500. Like he can't have less than 1,500 with his offense because you have weapons on the outside. You had intermediate with Goddard. Saquon probably he has to have at least 1,500 yards to make this deal relevant, and I think he can because he's like Nick said, 13 games, 5 of the last 6 years. If he can bump that up to maybe about 15 games, I think he gets it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. Again, for me, it goes back, when you talk about the injuries, it's right. You're playing behind that Giants offensive line with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. I'm not sure how you guys feel. I think I have an idea how you feel about Daniel Jones, but not the best situation, as Jason talked about. I mean, Saquon was being used, just trying to get him the ball in any way, shape, or form. He was taking a lot of hits, bad offensive line. I think obviously coming to Philly, things are going to be a lot easier for him. It'll allow him to settle in early, stay healthier, and just do whatever he needs to do. And it's not like they break the bank. That's the thing for me. It's not like they went out and traded something. Oh, it's an offseason. We had a bad finish to last year. What can we do? We need to make a splash. Let's go make a move. It was free agency. They didn't have to give up anything, just $12 million. It was just a few years ago. It seems like Kamara and Gurley were getting $14, $15 million a year. So obviously that's come down a little bit there. I'm fine with $12 million a year over 3 years for Saquon. And again, for me, it's an offensive league, right? That's the way the game is trending. You can't do really much, if anything, on defense nowadays. For me, I'm all about loading up on the offense. I do think they need another pass catcher, maybe draft a tight end in the draft. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Matt. They will have to address those other spots for sure. And I think it's going to be in the first round, potentially, depending how the rest of the free agency goes. I know I wanted them to take a receiver in that first round. The vibes I'm getting is maybe they'll take a corner. So we'll see what they do in the first round of the draft, maybe to get some of those other things. So, Jason, what do you got?
You got to go defense in the first round. You probably got to go defense the first 3 rounds because
I remember Matt saying that a few weeks ago.
Because you already had enough on offense before you added Saquon. If we're going to be honest about it, like Matt, I'm with you on that. I'll agree with you on that. They had enough on offense before adding Saquon, so you have to go defense. You have no corners, you have no legit linebackers at all. You got
fantastic corners in the first round. There could be 5 corners taken in the first round in April, so maybe that's where they go.
So let me okay. So here's the problem I have. We're saying it's an offensive league, and it is. But in the Super Bowl, we saw 2 top 5 defenses go at each other. In the playoffs, the most common denominator was guys were good defensively. If you look at the Eagles' offensive numbers, break them down, they were among the top in the league in most categories. So it's not like they had this anemic offense. They just went so nuclear in the first 10 games that by the time that they went to the second half of the season, and I'm not trying to pick a fight here or make jokes, but after they played us, it changed. That it's theoretically the way the offense ran, the confidence, it just seemed to change. I'm not gonna say that we broke them or what. I'm not trying to have that, credit, but I'm just saying things change with them. Getting Saquon, and you're telling me, and then people also, let's not also forget this. They also signed Noah Dickinson today for $84 million. So you have the offensive line you have is elite. You're poured millions of dollars in the offense. Jordan Mailata has a nice contract. Yeah, you get Kelsey off the books, but you just turn around, you just sign Noah Dickinson to this huge deal. So again, we're investing in things that are going to require, and I'll say this. The Mahomes proved so much to us all, I think, and to most observers, that not only is he an elite QB, but he's doing what QBs have to do in this era. And that is they're going to have to get by with less. And look, that's also the measure to Brock Purdy, right? Because once we can't re-sign Ayuk, like we're going to see how good you are once we start losing and we start taking weapons off of you. Whether we like it or not, at some point, the Eagles are going to have to start minimizing some of this cap and start saying, all right, Hurts, it's your turn to go. Because to me, it doesn't make much sense. You're giving a guy elite QB money, and then you're saying, but I don't want you to be an elite QB. It's weird to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. And look, again, I like Jason that likes it. I like you that like it. I like most Eagle fans like it. But to me, from a picture 1,000 feet up, it just looks like a situation where you just proven to me that you as a franchise, you don't fully believe in Hurts. You can't tell me you do when you put this much money into it. And as far as the Giants being a rival, they ain't been a rival since they got Daniel Jones. They're the rival of the top 5 draft pick. That's about what they're the rival, because they're trash. Like, let's just be honest. Like, and I gotta be honest. Like, and let me just take this one shot at New York. Y'all should burn that franchise. I'm just telling you right now, that franchise is hideous. I don't know what y'all doing over there. You need to just take a poll and go hit Madden and tell some Madden GM kid to go take over your team, because that team is a mess. It's
quick
trash.
question for you, Matt. Which is worse, the New York Jets or the New York Giants? Who's in more disarray the last 5 years?
Giants. By and large, because I don't
close,
think
though.
It's very close. But here's the thing: I don't think the Giants can get an Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. I think if Aaron Rodgers gets contacted by the Giants or caliber QB, he's like, "Nah, I'm good. I'll pass."
Yeah, I'll agree. The Giants are in a worse shape than the Jets over the past 5-8 years, if you will. Yeah, the Jets still were able to pull in Aaron Rodgers. They were pull in Garrett Wilson in the draft, other players.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
And I mean, even getting a coach like Robert Saleh. I mean, honestly, like the Jets are in way better shape still than the Giants.
Well,
Giants.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just agreeing with Jason.
We'll talk about the Giants here in just a minute. I just threw some things out just to finish with the Eagles and the defense. The biggest issue to me last year, closing the season, don't get me wrong, it was a little bit of personnel for sure. They didn't have the linebackers, et cetera. The secondary didn't play well. But to me, it was scheme. They had no idea what they were doing defensively. It was Desai for however many games. Then all of a sudden, you kind of hear that they had Patricia just waiting in the back just in case anything went wrong. If that's your plan going in, you're already set up to fail. You can't go in with that kind of mindset. And then they not only do they go in with that mindset, they actually make the switch, which made things 10 times worse during the season. They bring in Fangio, they bring in more, at least they'll have some stability. Again, I'm more confident in Fangio, the defense, than I am more in the offense. I'm not saying they'll be bad. I think they'll be great with these weapons they got. But I think Fangio brings some stability to that defense, and we'll see what they do in the draft. But to me, I think scheme is going to be the biggest difference heading into next year, and hopefully it's a good one. But just to finish off for the Giants, as we talked about, though they didn't do nothing, right? They get rid of Saquon. Where's that money going to go? Well, it's going to go to Brian Burns Jr., the star pass rusher from the Panthers, who's been looking for that long-term deal over the last 3 years. The Panthers just not really able to give it to him. Franchise tag now 2 years in a row. He was franchise tagged before the start of free agency, but he is packing his bags and heading to the New York Giants for a 2nd and a 5th round pick. And then they already locked him up 5 years, $150 million. So you look at that defensive line now for the Giants, maybe taking a page out of the Eagles book. You got Dexter Lawrence, one of the best defensive tackles in the middle of that defensive line. And now you got Thibodeau, who has been fantastic since he was drafted in the top 10 for the Giants, and now you pair him on the other side with Brian Burns. So you got 3 stud defensive linemen for the Giants there, and they've got the 6th pick in the draft. I know all of us don't feel strongly about Daniel Jones. I would move off of him immediately. I mean, all 3 of us would have never given him that contract that they gave him last year. 45 million he made. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. But what do you guys see the Giants doing? They do get Brian Burns. That's a big get for them defensively.
Too much money.
Man, you left out the elite guy, man, in his pickups.
Devin Singletary.
There you go. Listen, great. I'm shocked. And again, I will turn our focus later. What's Houston going to do at running? I mean, Houston had the most cap space out of any team. We'll touch on them later, but haven't made any moves. And they're losing guys left and right, including Singletary. So yeah, Matt, good point there. I mean, the Giants did do something, and they got the 6th pick.
So I'll say this with Singletary in New York. He's going back with Daboll, coach he's familiar with. And for that offensive line, he might be a better fit. He's more of a tackle breaker type running back because he knows I'm not going to have much protection. Saquon's more of a finesse, hit the outside lanes. Devin Singletary runs between tackles, and he can break tackles. He's good at point of contact. So maybe for that scheme he fits, but he's still not Saquon. So
again, a different offensive line, right? When you go from Houston, C.J. Stroud was throwing it all over the yard. That kind of frees up some of those running lanes. You got an all-pro at Tunsil at left tackle, a decent offensive line. You're going to a way different situation now if you're Singletary and the Giants. But I guess they needed to fill that void, Matt.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, Devin Singletary is like a poor man's version of Saquon Barkley. Houston's interesting to me. I think they're on the clock. I think they really got to put together something because they got that rookie contract of that QB who we all think is a top 10 guy, CJ Stroud at that position. So I think they gotta go out there either maybe this year or end of next year. They got to start really putting pieces next to him so they can really make that challenge and take full advantage of that rookie contract.
And
maybe they go get Aaron Jones
today as well. He goes to Minnesota.
Yeah.
Maybe they go get Aaron Jones.
I think that would be a huge fit. And he is a Texas guy, right? And there's a lot of talk now. He's from Dallas. So the Cowboys talk. They have no running back on the roster. As of right now, Rico Dowdle is their starting running back. No, him and Deuce Vaughn, the only 2 running backs on the roster. A lot of talk about him going home to Dallas. I would hate to see it. And let's just talk about the Packers now since we're on that subject. Josh Jacobs, 4 years. I believe he gets $48 million.
Yes.
If my memory serves me right.
Yes,
So $12 million exactly. The same exact deal that Aaron Jones signed 3 years ago. So exactly the same. So they get rid of Jones, who through the last 5 games of the season was over 100 yards every single game. He missed a lot of the season with those injuries, but when he returned, he was on fire for Green Bay. We remember that playoff performance against Dallas where they beat the brakes off him from start to finish. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. But Packers deciding to go even younger, already one of the youngest teams in the league. They go out and re-sign Josh Jacobs, a 26-year-old running back, the NFL's leading rusher 2 years ago, 4 years, $48 million. So Aaron Jones to the wayside. Josh Jacobs comes into the Packers. Guys, at least for me, I was obviously high on the Packers coming into last year. I've been telling you, I think one of their guys I might pick to win the Super Bowl heading into next year. But for me, if you're in terms of 1 year or short term, I like Aaron Jones better than Josh Jacobs. But I guess if you're going to get him for 4 years, I guess maybe you can make that signing. I just think Aaron Jones, no matter where he goes next year, is going to have a big impact. Maybe I think he's got 1 or 2 good years left, but the Packers electing to sign Josh Jacobs, giving him some running back money, something the Packers don't necessarily do either.
I love this deal.
Yeah.
That's my favorite deal of the day so far. I really love Josh Jacobs getting out of Vegas. I mean, because they weren't going to pay him. I don't think they valued his entire skill set as a running back anyway. And I think he gets a new lease on life. And like you said, Green Bay already one of the youngest teams in the league. Now they have a young core of talent at all the skill positions. I like it for Josh Jacobs. I like it for Green Bay. I think this is a great deal. Of course, you'd like to have Aaron Jones still there. I mean, we're not going to discredit Aaron Jones, but I think with Josh Jacobs, you get someone who's a bit younger. You get a similar style, if you will, so you're not losing too much stylistically. So you can still run a lot of the same schemes and the same formats as they had in the past. But I really love Josh Jacobs in this offense. What he can do. He's a more imposing runner than Aaron Jones. So I think he's going to like steamroll a few more people. I think you need that, and I really do like Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, he's not quite at the level of Derrick Henry, but Alabama running back, I see some similarities, and in this offense, it could be scary hours. They can just hand
Derrick
the ball
Henry,
off and let them just run wild.
also a free agent, a name just to keep an eye out here. That could maybe end up with Jason's Baltimore Ravens here coming down the stretch. What do you
I
think?
don't. I'm gonna say it now before we. I'm gonna kill that noise right now.
You don't want him?
I don't think I want him, but
Oh, I was gonna say, whew.
I don't think Derrick Henry ends up in Baltimore. I think he ends up in Dallas. I do.
Oh, geez, I don't know about
I
that.
think he ends up in Dallas. I think it's something about that draw. He trains in Dallas already. It's it's pretty much like already a thing. Just hasn't been like now. I mean, of course, Baltimore is interested in him, but I don't think he makes it to Baltimore.
Cowboys going to have to do something here. We talked about the running backs on their roster. Matt, how do you feel about Josh Jacobs of the Packers?
I love it. I mean, you got a guy who I think is more of a bell cow. He's 3 years younger. And Aaron Jones, the biggest issue with him has always been durability. I mean, he's a guy that pops 1 week and literally sits out the next. And look, I think Aaron Jones is a wonderful back. I think he's a guy there that, he's electric. I mean, he shredded us last year. So he's a guy that, really dynamic in the open field. So look, he has all the respect from me. I just think how they see it is we get a back that's 3 years younger. We get a back that's more of a bell cow. We got a back that's more of a dominant runner that doesn't rely on one cuts and speed to get open. He literally can truck you, stiff arm you, and get pretty much wherever he wants to go. So I just think it's a brilliant move by them. They also shockingly, I can't say it's shockingly, but I am surprised that they did release David Bartiari from their longtime tackle. So they made some moves today, and then also they re-signed Xavier McKinney, who's one of those young guys that they have that they developed. He got a huge, I think it was 65 or 68 million, something like that. So they're making moves and they're doing everything they're supposed to do as Green Bay continues to be a team that, look, they have great GM and they make great moves.
I mean, it's a little crazy too, right? You think about those teams, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Packers have historically good teams, since they're, since they began in the NFL. And a lot of them don't make, big moves like that or sign guys to big deals. The Packers, again, going all in today. McKinney was the big one. The Eagles were in till the final minutes on Xavier McKinney. He gets a huge deal. And that was something that they really needed, was help on the back end. We're not sure about Jair Alexander coming back to Green Bay next year. They needed that safety, and now they'll get it. So Green Bay making some big moves here today. We'll see if David Bakhtiari maybe ends up with the Jets, a big good friend of Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't been able to stay healthy at all. And who knows, maybe if he just wants to play elsewhere the last couple of years. But he'll be a name maybe to keep an eye on for the Jets, who need an offensive line desperately. Just to finish the talk here on the running backs, Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift, identical deals, 3 years, $24 million, $8 million a year for these two guys. I'm a little confused about the Pollard signing right with Tennessee. I thought it was going to be Spears, who looked good last year. They drafted him with one of those high picks, in the first couple rounds. And now they signed almost a similar back in Tony Pollard, who I thought really couldn't get going last year with a great offensive line in Dallas. But they give him $8 million a year. He gets DeAndre Swift money to come over to Tennessee. Don't want to spend too much time on the Titans here, but just your guys' thoughts on Tony Pollard.
Next.
Yeah, I had kind of feeling you might do that. And Matt, I know when we talked, I saw your face too when I mentioned Spears. I know you're a Spears fan too, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I don't like it. Fantasy wise, I think it's going to stifle Spears' production. But I'll say this about Pollard. This could be a good move for him career wise, because I think he's not a every down back. I think he's a guy that comes in on them third downs and can make good plays. I think that's where we saw his value in Dallas. It was when he got converted to being an every down back that we saw that he's kind of long in the tooth and doesn't necessarily have the ability to do that every game. So I like Pollard in that situation.
So we're paying $8 million for a third down back, is what you're saying?
Correct.
which is insane.
Look, as long as my team doesn't do it, I'm good.
And let me tell you again, Tennessee just keep question marks all off season, right? The firing of Mike Vrabel because apparently the front office didn't, like the interaction between the two. I mean, a weird situation in Tennessee. So no Mike Vrabel. Everybody's trying to redo some things over there. But yeah, $8 million for Tony Pollard. A lot of rumors thought about him coming back to Dallas, but I guess
they're never gonna. Tennessee's never gonna do anything until they do right by Eddie George, man. They wasted that man's prime careers, and then
did they waste Derrick Henry's?
Yes,
definitely wasted Derrick Henry's.
They did get to a conference. Did they get to the conference title game or no that year?
they did.
They did. Wow.
They did.
2019.
They did. 2019, they got to the conference title game.
Wow.
They did.
Yeah, they made the conference championship. How about?
And you know what's now that you just said that, this is what's crazy. They've burnt Earl Campbell, Eddie George, and Henry. They've burnt 3 elite
Hall
power
of Fame
backs.
running. Derrick Henry's going to go to the Hall.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame running backs.
Prime running backs. They burnt them out.
And you burnt out 2 Hall of Fame-esque quarterbacks. You let Warren Moon pretty much walk for nothing, and then you didn't let Stephen Air have the grace to play his whole career in Tennessee.
Again,
That's
1
a
yard
fact.
away for the Titans. Could have been Super Bowl.
R.I.P.
What a game.
R.I.P. He
R.I.P.
didn't let him play his whole career in Tennessee. So,
And similar deal. Go ahead, Jason.
But the weird thing about Tennessee is, why did DeAndre Hopkins go there, and why does he want to stay still?
I think again, this goes back to last year. The market just wasn't there for him, I think. And I think Tennessee they offered, the most
No,
trade
the market was there. We wanted him in Baltimore. He decided to go to Tennessee instead.
Well, we'll see. Again, he'll be, I believe, on the roster come next year. But similar deal real quickly is the Bears and DeAndre Swift. They've been struggling at running back the last couple of years. Maybe they get their guy now. Offensive line hasn't been great, as we've seen with Justin Fields behind center. They're looking to improve that. It did get a little bit better last year. They've added Sweat defensively. He was fantastic after the trade. They re-signed Jalen Johnson at corner to a big deal, one of the best corners in the league. And they'll have the number 1 and the number 9 pick in the draft here just 45 days away. So you look at some of these mocks, and we'll have mine coming out this weekend, or this week, I should say. Caleb Williams projected to go number 1. And at number 9, maybe they can get a receiver. And again, we're just talking position-wise here. Whatever quarterback they decide to take at 1. And then you're sitting at 9. You could end up with a Brock Bowers or a Rome Odunze, maybe Malik Neighbors, depending how the draft unfolds. I think they could be looking at a nice offense come next year for just, the stepping stone, I guess I should say, for the Bears.
I don't think they stay at 1. If you still right now have Justin Fields on your roster, I don't think they stay at 1.
Oh, and let me tell you this, Jason, from what I've heard today, is the market has dried up. Nobody wants him. The offers when the first thing, right, when they first got the number 1 pick, they were like, oh, maybe we can get a first round for Fields. And then that kind of died after a week or two. The second round pick has been alive for we got to get a second for him. That's not even close to the case now. If he does happen to get traded, we'll see who kind of gives him one. It might be for a 5th or 6th round pick, which would be for what none of us foresaw happening. I think somebody, just to talk about the Bears and Fields, somebody needs to make a move, I think, for Fields, and I think soon, because it's not going to cost him anything.
I don't think with Justin Fields still on the roster, I think we're leaning towards trusting him being there next year. I have a feeling about this. I think they might end up trading one. I think they're realizing that, hey, we might actually have something here if we just put time and effort into it. If I were the Bears with this draft, I know
where you're going with it.
I would trade that number 1 pick and get a hell of a bunch of players back in return for it. And a later pick. And I would use the number 9 pick to probably go after a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And just to your point,
I would, yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just saying that the thing about Justin Fields that's crazy is we saw Mac Jones go to for 6, which I thought was crazy. I would have thought maybe a 5th or a 4th.
It's bad. Yeah.
I mean, he was just starting. He was everybody's darling his rookie year.
And that's what I'm to my point. That's the market for Mac Jones, who obviously I would take Fields over Jones. But if you put up the stats and you talk to people around the league, they don't view them as entirely too different. And that's why when Mac Jones gets the 6th, I think you may be 4th or 5th for Justin Fields. I'll be surprised if it's 4th and below. I'm thinking 5th or 6th.
Can we talk about the 2021 quarterback draft?
Oh my goodness.
One of the worst quarterback drafts in history now.
It's bad.
I mean, you got number 1 pick. in Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. Now you got Mac Jones going there with him.
Well, let me give you some other stats too. The best record out of that quarterback class is Trey Lance, who is 2-2. Everyone else that was drafted in that class is well below 500, and even Trevor Lawrence, I think, is 20-30 as a starter. Urban Meyer, so you give him a little bit of a break there because that was a brutal situation. But everybody with severely records below 500 in that draft class. I mean, it is a awfully bad quarterback class. Trey Lance, 2-2, has the best record.
But again, now we look at it like, okay, Justin Fields is probably still the best quarterback from that draft. If you look at it now, I mean, it's starting to show itself.
I still got stock in Trevor, though.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. 100%. I think he's fine.
Sunshine's okay.
He was good before the injury last year, too. I think 2 years ago when they really got it going, they were one possession away from beating the Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl that year in the playoffs. They got hot at the end of the year. I think they were doing well this year until Trevor got that injury. That leg injury kind of hindered him a lot towards the end of the year. I think he'll be back, and I think the Jaguars, it's going to be a fun division to watch next year with Anthony Richardson coming back healthy.
I would say that the jury is still out on Trey because he had that one crazy injury, and
I don't know.
Bro.
Let me ask you this, and Matt, you would know better too. Is it not bizarre that he gets traded or whatever? He did see some time on the field. He's 2-2. He started 4 games. I mean, he can't even get a look. He can't get on the field at all for anybody. He's third string with Dallas. I just think it's a weird situation. Something's not smelling right off of Trey Lance around the league, right? He can't even get an opportunity.
Well, the thing about Trey Lance is he was drafted with the archetype that he was an athletic QB with a hyper big arm. So the problem was scouts for the San Francisco 49ers, my team, they saw him dominate a lower division. You're talking about a guy who only played 1 year.
Yeah.
Because he redshirted his first year. Second year, he played phenomenal. Third year, he only played 1 game.
Yeah, and I actually got to do one of his games. He came to Newark to play against Delaware in that COVID year. So I had a chance to see him twice at North Dakota State, and I was not in on him, on the draft either. But again, San Fran, they made that decision. That might go down as a bad one, but they got Brock Purdy, right? So
yeah,
it doesn't matter there. But let's stick with Justin Fields because that's going to be the hot topic now. We expected, at least I did, maybe some movement earlier today, right? Where are those dominoes going to fall at quarterback, and where is he going to go? Well, a lot of the talk was Atlanta, right? For the last month or so, it's been Justin Fields to Atlanta. You've had fake reports coming out say it's a done deal. He's already going, etc. Well, Kirk Cousins, he goes to Atlanta. Some other dominoes fall. The Raiders signed Gardner Minshew. Raiders were one of the last teams that needed a quarterback. They signed Gardner Minshew to compete with Aiden O'Connell. So they obviously kind of not interested. Luke Getsy is their offensive coordinator. He was Chicago's last year. So maybe Luke Getsy going to Las Vegas, maybe didn't want to work with Fields again. A lot of the reports say that he did, but it didn't seem that way if you're signing Gardner Minshew to a 2-year deal when you could have sent a 5th-round pick to bring in Justin Fields. The only team now, when you look at it, there's only a few teams out there that that would even make an offer. That's why, Jason, I don't think it's totally crazy that he's on the roster, but I think that would only be due to the dry market. I mean, I think it's come down so much and it's so cold, they can't find one. And the only team now, you look at it, right? Raiders signed Minshew. Minnesota has no quarterback. I think Jaron Hall is the only quarterback under contract in Minnesota with the loss of Kirk Cousins. But do the Bears trade him in the division? I don't think so, but maybe Minnesota says, you know what? I'll give you a 4th. And if they give him a 4th, I think the Bears would have to take it.
The Bears are too prideful of an organization to trade him in division. I know, Matt, we talk about the lesser of, rivalries and loyalty and things like that, but I don't think the Bears would trade him in division.
No, Bears is definitely old school. I agree with you.
Well, here's my question, guys. I mean, I know, Jason, you said Chicago. I don't see another spot for him around the league, even a spot where he can compete. Like, is there a spot where he can compete for the starting job?
Come to San Fran, baby.
Tennessee.
And that's where I'm going to take it next, right? Because then you're getting some things now with that market being the way it is where can he go and want to play backup? I think it's crazy we're having that conversation now, but that's the conversation that's being had. It was talked about today in Philly that if they can get him for a 6th, they would want to bring him in to back up Jalen Hurts. You just heard Matt talk about bringing him in to back up Purdy. Is that something you guys think would be beneficial to your team if you can get him as a backup for a 6th-round pick?
Fields is a starter. He's not going to play backup anywhere. He's a starter. He's not a backup.
No, I think
I agree with
start over Purdy.
I think if he went there.
This is the most incredible thing about Justin Fields. Like you said, that there's people who view him and Mac Jones somewhat similar. I don't know what they're looking at.
I don't. No.
Because Mac Jones doesn't have the mobility, can't extend plays. I would argue that Mac Jones can't process in short windows, I mean, as much as Justin Fields, and we talk trash about his decision making at times, what people have to understand is that O-line has routinely been, since he's been drafted, in the bottom 10 of the league, and at times the bottom 5. At what point, what does Justin Fields not have? He has an arm. He can process in short time. He can throw on a rope. He's mobile.
He's got a
He
good
can
arm.
extend plays.
Yeah,
I don't know what else people want from him.
To
I don't
me,
either.
to go back
I
to your
don't either.
processing, I watched a lot of Justin Fields. I wrote an article covering college football a few years ago when he was a senior, or when he was last year at Ohio State. And the whole purpose of the article was Justin Fields come back for another year. I said, you should not leave after this year. Come back to Ohio State, have another good year, and you could have been the number 1 pick the following year. That's the point that I was trying to make. He came out that year, and I just think he just took him a little bit to get going. I think the processing is the issue. I think when you watch him play, and I've watched a lot of him here the last couple of years, it's rare that you see him take a 3-step or a 5-step drop under center or a 3-step drop out of the gun and make a throw.
He can't.
Ain't no
Though.
Ain't no time back there.
Got time.
No time back there.
No. Listen, it's a 3-step drop. Is a 3-step drop. You get rid of the ball. That's 3 seconds. That's not
that line is that bad.
Listen,
He
it's
only
bad.
has
Don't get me
3
wrong. I
seconds.
like Justin Fields. I wish the Steelers would have got him. I think he would have been great in Pittsburgh. But I think some people are giving him a little bit too much credit. I think he does everything else well. If he gets that part of the game, then he is it. And I think he can do it. I think he can get that part of the game going. But right now, I just see a lot of question marks in terms of the throwing ability and reading down the field. He's great, and he's at his best when he gets out of the pocket and DJ Moore goes deep and he rolls out and he throws it to DJ Moore.
I thought about your question. I have an answer.
Yeah.
A team that's take a flyer on him for him to be a backup, let him sit behind somebody. Gang Green, New York Jets. If you're listening,
Yeah, I agree.
if you are
100%.
listening, if they're trying to get rid of Fields, you trade.
Why not?
I trade a third and fourth.
Oh,
Because
he would be on his way to New York right now if you offered
I would
him.
trade a
They're not
third and
getting
fourth
that.
for Justin Fields in New York, because you got to remember, Aaron Rodgers is still 40, 41 years, like somewhere around there.
I agree.
Yeah.
Who knows if he even can play a full season.
That's what I'm saying. I would, and because Justin Fields right now is way better than anything they've had outside of Aaron Rodgers, and we saw all 13 seconds of that. So the
If
Jets,
they had him instead of Zach, they would be in the playoffs.
yeah,
I agree with you on there for
So,
sure.
so let me just say this. I just looked on Pro Football Focus. Their line is so bad that the only people that they say that have any redeeming value, essentially, is Braxton Jones, who was a rookie last year. He's the left tackle. And Darnell Wright, who was a rookie. No, I'm sorry. Darnell Wright was a rookie last year. The other guy, Braxton Jones, was a rookie 2 years ago. So the best guys they got, the only guys they're saying that have any value are 2 guys that have between them 2 years. That's it. Everybody else they're saying you should just burn. So I don't like when you have that type of bad offensive line play. I got news for you. And I'm not saying this to start a war. I'm saying this because I just think let's talk. I think Justin Hurts, if he played behind that Bears O-line, I don't think he's the same guy. I don't think he's the same guy at all, bro.
I'm a big trenches guy, so I think no quarterback is the same guy except for Patrick Mahomes, who's on a whole nother level than everybody else. But I think offensive line matters for everybody. So I agree. I think it would have been, a different story. It would have been interesting to see,
So how can you get a 5-step drop though? How can you do a 5-step drop when the
as a
line
quarterback,
is so bad?
having played the position for 13 years, as a quarterback, you have a 3-second clock in your head. When you get that snap out of shotgun, whether it's 3 or 5, that ball's got to come out. And again, line hasn't been great. I give him that. But if we're going to go to that point, let's talk about Mac Jones, because his rookie year, he was fantastic, almost rookie of the year. The offensive line was not good. They had a few weapons, but I can't even name the top receiver for him his rookie year. And then he has a good year. Then the next year he's expected to take that leap. What does Bill Belichick do? He hires a defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator to call the plays. One of the most asinine things I've ever seen in the NFL. And then he has a really bad year. And now he goes for a 6th-round pick. So my thing is, it's a similar situation to Fields, right? They both were not put in places to succeed. Jones was put in the worst situation I've ever seen. I'm not a Mac Jones fan. I'm not a Mac Jones guy. But you can't, for him to be in that situation, I don't think anyone could have played quarterback for that team.
But he had a better situation still than Justin Fields, though.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that remark. What do you mean by?
Oh my goodness, Mac Jones. he had 3 defensive guys calling the plays. That's one of the most insane setups for a quarterback I've ever seen. You get him 1 year as a rookie and he looks good, and then his second year, that's the biggest year for a quarterback. That rookie to sophomore year, especially after you have a decent year like he did for New England, was up there rookie of the year. And then you give him those guys, and they just take a complete fall off. And again, some of it goes on Mac Jones for sure, but the situation was just almost nobody could have been successful there, I don't think.
Well, I would argue that the reason why Mac Jones looked so good his rookie year, and I know because I had this conversation with many people, because they were hell-bent that San Fran should have took him at 3, and I didn't want that at all. Mac Jones is...
And Matt, just quick, I heard they were split down the middle in San Fran.
Correct.
It was half for Lance, half wanted Jones, and it was ultimately Shanahan who made the final call.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that Mac Jones is going to have a problem in this league is he can't extend plays at all.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
And, when we talked about Baker Mayfield struggled in this league because he couldn't throw off his feet. And to Baker's credit, he's gotten better at throwing off his feet than he ever has before. So I'm just saying this. I'm not saying Mac Jones is irredeemable, and I do think he's a solid QB. But when we're talking about Mac Jones and Justin Fields, whether we like it or not, and I know he's got bad press, and I know people like to discourage him and say all types of names, but Bill Belichick's still Bill Belichick. And they've still been running the system in that as a franchise, we're talking about franchise stability. We're talking about a team that has been a franchise that's been way more stable over the last 2 decades than what the Chicago Bears have done. I mean, real quick, who's the Chicago Bears' great offensive quarterback? I mean,
all time,
it's probably Jim McMahon.
It's depressing. I think Jay Cutler is the leading passer.
Probably Rex Grossman.
Well, most passing yards in a season is Cutler still.
Yeah, I think it's Cutler. But again,
right.
But that tells the story.
Right.
Eric Kramer, Steve Walsh, no. Jim Harbaugh, no. Like we can keep going.
And he struggled. And Bailey Zappi at times looked better in that pocket than Mac Jones did. So I don't know. Is that the offensive line? And I'm not saying, look, everything you said is real facts, and I'm not going to argue with that too much. But let's just be honest too. Bailey Zappi was playing so well. Many people in the stands were saying that he should be the starter on the team. So I mean,
I just think
no one's saying that.
They were
no one's
both
saying
so
that
bad.
about Justin Fields' backup.
And let me be clear about this. I'm playing devil's advocate. I think the situation is similar. But I mean, if it was down to 2, I think it's a no-brainer. I'd choose Justin Fields over Mac Jones, and it's not particularly close in any way, shape, or form. So I'm in the same boat there for sure. But we'll see what happens, because again, that market it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Minnesota is the only place that has that opening that I can think of right now. And again, if not, maybe he's playing backup somewhere next year, or maybe, as Jason said, he's on the Chicago roster.
He's going to be on the Chicago roster, because I don't think they should. Caleb Williams,
QB1.
No, I don't like him.
QB1.
I was watching a show today where what was it? Was it NFL Live, or was it the NFL Network, where they would take Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams? I'm hearing that a lot now.
It's starting to get interesting too now, right? Because you always hear different things as you approach draft day. A lot of it, could be true or not. You got to decide what you think is real. A lot of people have Drake May now. People
ain't no way
that's why it's going to be a crapshoot till the
smoke.
They need to be slapped. Anybody takes Drake May before anybody else is need to be.
That's smoke screen. Jaden Daniels is the most upside of all the QBs.
He does. He does.
Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams is going to struggle in this league. Mark my word. He's going to struggle, and he's going to struggle mightily.
I mean, I'm already excited for the preseason. All right, we get to see some of those quarterbacks in action. All right, let's talk a lot about the wide receivers here. I know we're going a little bit over on time, but a lot to get into, and this is why. T. Higgins, franchise tagged by Cincinnati. He was one of the big free agent wide receivers supposedly this year. He was franchise tagged a little while ago, I think maybe a week or 2 ago. We didn't hear nothing about it, and until free agency starts today, we thought, franchise tag, he'll be back in Cincinnati. He has demanded a trade after signing the franchise tag. So this morning he made it clear to Cincinnati he wants to play elsewhere. We'll see what that looks like. Odds are maybe they just keep him on that tag and there's nothing he can do about it. Or maybe they trade him. As of right now, he's a Cincinnati Bengal, but he has made it clear that he wants to go somewhere else. Michael Pittman Jr. re-signed with the Colts, 3 years, $70 million after
It's a
getting
nasty
taxed. They
deal.
worked out that deal.
Woo.
Mike Evans back to Tampa, 2 years, $41 million. How about Gabe Davis getting 3 years, $39 million to head to Jacksonville? And then Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $19.5 million to return to the New England Patriots. Obviously, the big one standing out here, guys, T. Higgins. What do you think about his trade request, and will he be a Cincinnati? And if not, who needs him?
Everybody needs him. You talking about
yeah.
he's that guy. Do I think he's going to get it? Probably not. I mean, Cincinnati needs him more than he needs them. I know people don't like to hear that, but if you pick up the phone and ask any GM, like we just said real quick on here, any GM is going to be willing to have a conversation about T. Higgins. I mean, he's that good, and we don't even think we've seen the best of T. Higgins. I mean, like that's the thing about T. Higgins. If you're talking about a guy who has basketball athleticism, amazing hands, great route runner, he's a wide R1 anywhere else practically. I mean, just because Jamar Chase is such a freak and has such a connection with Burrow that we've basically have Higgins in a wide R2 role. But trust and believe, anywhere that he wants to go, there's going to be a GM that's willing to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins is like he's a WR1 anywhere.
That's fact.
In this league. If they're able to pull a trade off, it would be great. Not if, but would they actually let go of him? That's really the thing. The thing that matters is are they going to let go of him? It's not about can he get traded, because like you said, as soon as that first ring of the phone, let's do it now.
And let me say something to you, Jason, here quickly. He named the 4 quarterbacks he'd like to catch passes for an interview a few weeks ago: Trevor Lawrence, C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson.
Oh, well, we know in Baltimore,
those are the 4 places that at least he has.
Why no Brock Purdy, man? Why no Brock Purdy?
And Jalen Hurts either.
So in Baltimore, we've known this. He's actually talked to a few players about secretly wanting to play with Lamar Jackson. So I think Cincinnati is too prideful to trade him in division, knowing that the Browns just got Jerry Jeudy. Not going to be in division at all. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen. But going to Buffalo don't sound too bad.
That would be something, I think. Yeah, Gabe Davis, you substitute in T. Higgins. I think that'd be big time for Buffalo.
I think T. Higgins will move Diggs to a wide out too.
Yeah, and Diggs can move and play in the slot too, right? He's been good in the slot. Put Higgins on the outside. I think that would be the ideal spot. I like that, Jason.
That's the ideal spot. But is he gonna go anywhere? No.
Is anybody shocked that Diggs hasn't been released?
No,
I was.
I'm not. They don't have any other name recognition on offense outside of him and Josh Allen. You would lose the entire Buffalo Bills fan base if you released Diggs right now.
We'll see again. It seems like we're talking about Diggs every single offseason, if we'll be back in Buffalo or not. It seems like they're going to keep him as of now, but that'd be cool to see T. Higgins head over there to the AFC East for sure. But a lot of other big signings. We hit on all the big ones.
Matabike.
And Ravens for the Ravens up front defensively, he's in the big deal. The Lions the Rams signed Jonah Jackson from the Lions, so they get 3 years, $51 million for the guard there. John Runyon Jr. He leaves the Packers, I believe, to go to the Giants on 3 years, $30 million. Chris Jones, now the highest paid defensive tackle in the league, 5 years, $158 million. He finally gets that big deal, and of course, well deserved after the Super Bowls he was able to help bring in. We talked about Brian Burns. Bryce Huff going to be a big addition for that Eagles defense off the edge, as Matt talked about. Coming off his best year last year, guy in his mid-20s that's getting better year in and year out. Was like 3rd in pressure win rate last year, so he's going to be a big addition for them. And then some of the corners, Jalen Johnson back to the Bears. L'Jarius Sneed was franchise tagged by the Chiefs, but has permission to seek a trade. So, Jason, that's one thing we talked about earlier. Maybe some of those AFC North teams in the market, maybe a Baltimore or a Pittsburgh are in talks right now with the Chiefs about L'Jarius Sneed.
We got to be after we lost Geno Stone today.
That's right. Going to the Bengals in division, right?
In division. They gave him 3 years, $17 million or something like that. So
one more guy, Leonard Floyd, signed with San Fran, baby.
That's right. He's a Brandon Staley guy. So he's Brandon Staley now a member of the 49ers coaching staff in some way. So he's there. Also, just while we're on the subject of the 49ers, Armstead, one of those cap casualties, right? Matt talked about paying all these guys, and they tried to restructure, tried to get Armstead back, but unable to do it. So now he's a free agent coming off of one of his best years defensively up front for San Fran, and they restructured Juwan Jennings, so he'll be back next year. So a few moves
We'll
for them.
take him, Matt. We'll take him.
Right. Look, man, I got nothing but love for Armstead. I feel terrible.
We'll take
I
him.
mean, he's
Gladly.
been there since the beginning. So, look, it's not all good though, because we also signed Colton McKivitz back
That's
as right
right.
tackle, who's trash, but
Resign.
whatever.
Well,
So it's not all great.
Quickly point out still. Ayuk, is he a free agent?
No,
No? Okay.
I think next year. He wants to. Now, the rumor between his brother and I'm sure his agent is putting out there he wants to leave. I think he thinks he's a wide R1.
Well, he is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always told people I think he's the best 49er wideout in terms of just skill set. But in terms of being a wide R1, I don't know. Like, that's a different conversation. I don't know if he has that body for that.
Okay.
Love his talent. Will never hear me say a bad word about him. I think he's the best, one of the best route runners in the business. So I got nothing but respect for Ayuk. I just don't know if he's got that wide R1 type of situation. But look, he's best wide R we got in our side. I mean, I think Debo is probably the best football player, but without a doubt, Ayuk is the best wide out. So when we lose him, it's gonna be a problem. But again, that also goes to what we talked about before. With this new NFL, the days of having those long wide out QB relationships doesn't happen as much as it used to. So again, I think when you have an elite team, you're gonna have to make cutting costs, and unfortunately, some of that is talent. So.
And we talked about, right, Higgins wants a new contract. Ayuk obviously needs a new contract, with a lot of those guys under contract in San Fran. That makes it a little bit tougher. A lot of those guys making those big money, including Javon Hargrave, the big signing, the defensive line last year for San Francisco. So, guys, who do you think who's a better chance of getting traded? Is it T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk?
Ayuk.
Now you need the one.
Ayuk.
I think one of them could be gone for sure.
They just gave Jennings. They gave Jennings a contract. So I think they're trying to protect themselves in case there is a situation with Ayuk. Because I thought Jennings was going to be gone, but they reached out and gave him a nice little contract. So I think they're a little worried.
Well, we still got some more free agents here in the next couple of days. Some big names still to fall. Danielle Hunter from Minnesota, the best pass rusher in the free agency class, hasn't signed just yet. Also, we talked about it. Derrick Henry needs a new home. Aaron Jones going to need a new home. So some names still to fall, including Justin Fields, potentially, or maybe not. We'll find out here in the next few days of NFL free agency. Want to close out today with some women's college basketball guys with the incident that happened yesterday. Dennis, if you have the link or the footage, you can put it up on the screen for everyone. But South Carolina and LSU, a little bit of a scuffle. Had some guys jumping over the scores table, getting in on some of the action during it here. But just guys want to get your takeaways. It was kind of all over the place here. We're 6 days away from Selection Sunday. What do you think of the scuffle between LSU and South Carolina?
Well, I was watching the game the entire time. It was bound to happen at some point during that game. The game started off chippy, and it stayed that way. I mean, Cardoza injuries were banging each other in the post from the outset. There was already some trash talking going on during the game. I wish it didn't get to that level, but you saw something brewing the entire game, and I understand why Flower J's brother jumped over the scores table, but that's something that you just can't do. The game wasn't officiated tight enough the entire time. There was too much stuff going on. I would have gave teams warnings way earlier than that to prevent this even from happening. But Flower J did apologize to Don Staley directly after the game. It got out of hand. But with these two teams, there was no love lost. And people forget LSU really wanted to win the SEC championship. They haven't won the SEC championship tournament since 2003. So the 21 years since they won the championship, but they won the national championship last year, but they haven't won the SEC championship since 2003. And South Carolina's won the last 3 or 4 in a row. They eight out of the last 10 years, something like that. So they've been top South Carolina's top tier team in that conference. They're the queens of the conference. But LSU is right there with them. They will see each other again probably in the Final Four. And I pray to God that they're in separate brackets and they meet each other in the national championship game. I just want to see it. Like I just want to see it again. And people talk about Angel Reese not running out. Protect your investment. She was nowhere near the play. She was already walking towards the bench when it happened because the timeout being called, time situation being called, and she's still playing with a swollen ankle. So for people to say she didn't took her teammates, I think that's crap. You're told to not leave the bench in any sport. And Cardoza, she's 6'7". I mean, the push looked a lot worse than what it was. Flautas were like 5'8", and Cardoza is 6'7". I mean, it was a lot worse than what it looked, but like
you can see it here on your screen.
The only problem that I have with this situation is the fight at all. I don't have a problem with because you're going to get that in sports. That happens. But the difference between Coach Staley's response and Coach Walker's response was very stark in contrast. That's what the problem for me lies. And I think your team is a reflection of your coach. So LSU probably has a little bit of a snarky or snippier attitude because that's how Coach Mulkey is. Coach Staley is nothing but grace personified.
Matt, any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's weird. I'm seeing more and more of a. It's kind of like the Fab Five that I remember. Like, you remember like the first year, the Fab Five was everybody's darling, and then the second year, people started to like hate on them. Like, I'm seeing that with LSU, and it's crazy to me. I don't know why there's so much hate for Angel Reese and what she's done. I think some of it is, people just look. You're always going to have some jealousy when you're beautiful and talented, and you're always going to have some jealousy when you're winning on top of it. So the hate is going to always be there. Cardoza and Reese, they don't like each other. This just put it right out there. They don't like each other, and I think Cardoza, who I think will probably be a top 3 pick in the WNBA draft. Cardoza, for the most part, is kind of what she does. She's a bully. She's going to use her size, and she's going to set a tone. Now, she went out on social media, and I apologize and all that good stuff, but she would do it over again. I know she would.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to send a message to them, and that was pretty much that you're not going to do your little pretty girl thing over here and think you're going to walk away with the dub. Like, you're going to have to bleed to get this W. So
distance.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's funny because like the women's game we're seeing a certain level of chippiness that we didn't see before. Granted, it's always been physical than people like to believe. As somebody who's coached, high school girls, it's always been a little bit more physical, and it's always a lot more intense than people like to give it credit for. But I think what we're starting to see, just because of the exposure of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and some of these other stars, you're seeing it more and more out for people to consume. And so, like, to some people, it's a shocker. To people like me and Jason who've seen women's basketball for, a decade plus, it's not a shocker. It's like, this is what happens in the games. So much ado about nothing, honestly.
Yeah. This is part of the course, but at the same time, nobody turned this game off. They kept viewers the entire time. Like, we're living in an era in the last 3 years where attention has been shifted from the men's game to the women's game being top bill. I thought I'd never see the day. I mean, we can go back to the days of the Cheryl Millers and Cynthia Coopers and Cheryl Swoops, and then into the Hose Claw era and Tarazi and Sue Bird and like that. But they all walked, so this current era could run. I mean, you have people know who Juju Watkins is. People know who Angel Reese is. People know who Caitlin Clark is. People know who Flauja is. People know who Cameron Brink is. Can you name the top 5 men's college basketball players right now? Most people can't. You can probably name 2 or 3 good players, but after that, you're like, I don't know. So I think the women's game is great right now. And even with this fight happening, any publicity is good publicity. So you get people to tune in and see what's going to happen next. So I think the women's game is in good shape for a great tournament run, for high viewership, and the level of talent across the board now is unheard of. So consistently, it's not just the big schools anymore. It's not just the UConns and the Tennessees. I mean, we got teams like Jackson State who are amazing in the women's game. I mean, you have other teams in smaller conferences who are just dominating and winning games. So the women's college game is in great shape, and the WNBA has to be smarter about how they capitalize on this going forward. I mean, because you have the Aces, you have the Liberty, you have the Mercury, you have the Sparks, you have the Storm. But outside of those 5 teams, they don't really capitalize on it as much as they should. But I think the women's game overall is still in great shape, and women's college basketball, it's going to supplant the men for a few more years. I see this trend continuing.
Well, guys, some breaking news as we close it out here. We all heard the Patriots were in the market for a quarterback. They wanted to bring in a veteran that maybe could be the backup to whoever they bring in this year, or maybe they sit him behind somebody, but they will sign Jacoby Brissett, 1 year, $8 million. So he'll be a quarterback on the roster for New England next season, most likely in a teacher or instructor role, depending on who they take in the first round. But looks
breaking news to me. I thought you were going to break the news about Noah Fant signing for 2 years, $20 million with the Seahawks. That's bigger news than the Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, I guess so, for sure. And then one more thing. I had one more before we head out here for Minnesota. We talked about it. They need a quarterback. Word coming in now. They're looking at Sam Darnold or Jimmy Garoppolo in Minnesota. Your guys' thoughts on that? And then, I mean, it kind of looks now maybe if the Vikings are sitting there at 11, they may take a quarterback.
You see both our faces? That's the response.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my face to the Vikings potentially taking J.J. McCarthy at 11. So we'll see what they decide to do.
Well, that's my time.
Minnesota, they need a quarterback, so we'll see what happens. But it's been a fun free agency frenzy. It started here today. Some other things we couldn't get to. We'll be back again next Monday to talk some NBA now. Things starting to unfold. Almost playoff time in the NBA. Timberwolves losing Cat recently. That's going to hurt as they try to lock up one of those top seeds.
Is it really, though?
Is it?
It's going to hurt. I think your championship hopes come down a lot. We don't have time to talk about it. Can't even get into it tonight, but it's going to be an interesting close to the NBA. The draft 45 days away, so a lot still to come on next week's show. And maybe by next week, we'll have an idea of where Justin Fields will be potentially next season. So again, special thanks to Dennis for getting us up and on the air tonight. And guys, another fantastic show. We will see everybody next Monday, same time right here on DETV.